It was a rainy night. But it wasn't just the outside that was experiencing inclement weather. A storm was also brewing inside the palace. A chestnut-haired lady, out of desperation and fear from being kicked out of the palace, was kneeling in front of a blonde gentleman, begging him to marry her. The man, surprised though he was at her sudden proposal, stood, looking at her and said nothing. Wanting to persuade him, the chestnut-haired lady swore to be as meek as a rat in exchange for a 3-year marriage, wherein she'll disappear right after. He asked her a reason for him to accept her proposal. Left with no other option, she brazenly told him she knew what he's hiding. Still left unconvinced, the man stared her down and asked to prove her claim. Wanting to persuade him, she laid her cards bare. Kneeling on one knee to meet her eyes, he accepted her proposal. That's how she got married to Aslan Thordal, but their marriage wasn't really welcomed by most of his fellow nobles. Some were amazed, shocked even. Others criticized the Duke, Aslan Thordal, for having no taste in women despite having everything that a man could envy. The ladies whisper about her, the bride's humble origins and plainness, as they march onto the altar. However, the lady already knew what people were thinking of her, because she already read the original novel. She now lives inside that novel. She woke up one day as a 10-year-old with memories of the novels she read from her previous life. Believing it doesn't directly concern her current life, she ignored the memories. However, soon after, the events that will transpire in her life proved otherwise. It made her realize she's living a preordained life. Just like in the original novel, she became the Duchess of Thordal. It was when she was staring at their couple portrait that she reminisced the previous events that led to their marriage. At present, staring at the sunset by their terrace, she was surprised to find Duke Thordal, her husband, standing behind her and putting his coat on her shoulder. Together they watched the sunset on a chilly afternoon. She wished that their happy moments would last, even if theirs was just a contract marriage. These are her thoughts every morning, as she stared at their portraits hanging by the walls of their grand salon. It became a habit of her, as if it was reassuring her that she can have a future with him. But it isn't so. Just like in the novel, 3 years have passed and the inevitable came. The red-haired heroine of the novel, Rosalyn Peridot, the woman who truly captured Aslan Thordal's heart, was standing right before her. As soon as she saw her, memories from the novel that she read from her past life came rushing in. Duke Thordal would do everything in his power to be with his one true love, Rosalind. She, the current wife, shall be replaced, and nobody even cared to know what happened to her. She'll forever be known, just like in the novel, as the Duchess Thordal. Because she was an extra. With that last thought, she fainted. Waking up to her husband's worried expression, she realized she's in their bedroom. When he started to fuss and suggested for a doctor, she reasoned out her fainting as merely being surprised at the sudden arrival of Rosalind in their manor. Convinced, her husband started to explain the young lady's situation. But the Duchess need not hear his explanation. She already knew her story. Rosalyn Peridot was Duke Thordal's distant relative, orphaned at a young age and swamped with debt. She was about to be married off to any wealthy old nobleman who's willing to have her. Duke Thordal paid off all her debts and adopted her as his ward, providing all her needs and giving her a home by allowing her to stay in their manor. The Duke finished his explanation by stating that Rosalind will not be staying for long. He plans to properly introduce her to society and let her decide on a husband as soon as the season opens. All the Duchess did was give her consent. Rosalind and Aslan are bound to get close even if she tries to get in between them. Days passed and things in their home changed. What took her years and failed to accomplish, Rosalind achieved in 2 weeks' time. People regarded her as a lady of high caliber and is someone fit to be called as Lady of the Manor. Upon seeing her by the door of the Grand Salon, the warm atmosphere surrounding Rosalind shifted to something cold and distant. It was directed to the Duchess. Still, she tried to be cordial. Much to her surprise, Rosalind suddenly stood up and left her guests only to grab her by the arm and took her somewhere down the hall, far from the Grand Salon. She asked the Duchess if she's feeling okay. When the Duchess showed a puzzled expression, Rosalind inquired about the rumors she's been hearing that the Duchess was forced into marriage by Duke Thordal after kidnapping her and forcefully detaining her in his manor. Dread filled the Duchess as she remembered past events prior to their marriage. The kidnapping rumor was spread by none other her father. The Laerstein family was hell-bent on keeping her with them. Unable to bear her situation, she turned to the Duke for help. They staged a rumored detention and carried on with the marriage just to save her, besmirching his flawless reputation. Her nightmare with the Laerstein family all started when she was 10 years old and was buying bread. Their carriage suddenly stopped in front of her and a lady, a countess, was calling her Helen like a mad woman. It was at that time that her memories of the novels she read from her past life started to actually feel real. The butler was stopping the madam and was telling her that Helen, her daughter, is already dead. But the countess won't listen. The count alighted the carriage and coaxed his wife to stop, only to be surprised, and he, too, is calling her Helen. The Laersteins left, and it ended. But no, that night, she was kidnapped. The count hired men to abduct her and gave her as a gift to his wife. She found herself in a luxurious household, dressed to the nines, and a lady was pampering her. Leela Violet, which was her real name, was no more. She is to live by the name of Helena Laerstein. As long as she plays the role of said dead daughter, she'll be treated properly. For years, though the countess never heard her, she endured the horror of living by somebody else's name, with a crazy lady for a mother, all the while promising herself that she'll come back to her real parents when the madam dies. And so that day came, but the count didn't let her go. The countess bestowed Helen everything that she owns. Nobody can touch her inheritance until she comes of age. Enraged, the count suggested to get rid of her. But the executor of wills informed him that included in the countess' will, in the event that Helen perished before she comes of age, all inheritance are to be donated to church. Desperate, he locked her up in the manor's attic. Life was hard. The maids started treating her worse than they treat the peasants, but she finds comfort into knowing that with the death of the countess, nobody called her with the name Helen. She can now live as Leela, even just to herself. But her life became a living nightmare at the arrival of the count's mistress. Aside from being scorned by the woman Glock, her son from another nobleman was constantly directing his sexual advances towards her. He is a good-looking man, with hair as white as snow and skin just as fair. However, his looks weren't enough to stop her from feeling disgusted every time he directed his sexual advances toward her. Her only solace, if anybody can call it that, was her occasional appearances at balls as mandatory proof of the Laerstein family to the solicitors that the countess' sole heiress still lives. One night, as she was perfectly acting as a wallflower, she noticed a nobleman dropped his handkerchief. Seeing that he isn't aware of it, she picked up the item and hastened after him as he was walking away. The man was tall, fair, and handsome, with hair as gold as the early rays of the sun. Never in her entire life had she seen someone with outstanding features. Said man was the young Duke Aslan Thordal. His name sounded familiar, but all she knew at that moment is that he was from a prominent family. In exchange for returning his most prized handkerchief, Duke Thordal asked her if there's anything she wanted to ask of him. She politely declined his offer. He gave her one of his cufflinks as a token of his gratitude. She can present the cufflink to his manor at any time, and she'll be granted access to anything she requests should she think of any in the future. Returning to the count's manor, kept in the attic, she tried hard to recall Duke Thordal. Then suddenly she remembered. He was the main character of the novels she used to read from her past life. Contemplating on their encounter, the door of the attic opened and Glock entered. He started fondling her body. When she resisted, he threatened her about knowing her real identity. When it didn't work, he forcefully negotiated with her that he can find her parents if only she'll be good to him. For a moment, she let him fondle her, but disgust filled her. She grabbed a nearby brass candelabra, hit him on his right temple. He immediately fell on the wooden floor. unconscious and with a bloodied face. Scared and lost, she grabbed the cufflink given by Duke Thordal and went out of the Count's manor. She battled the heavy downpour with only a thin indoor gown to cover her from the cold. Arriving at the Duke's property, she faced him as she stood soaked to the bone and flooding his expensive carpet. The Duke did not mind the mess and called for a servant to take care of her. Clothed in a warm dress that surprisingly fits her to a T, she faced the Duke and fell into a crumpled heap. Kneeling just like what peasants do, she begged him to marry her. That rainy night led them to their contract marriage. Contrary to that night, the warm sunshine that touches her skin as she sat in the wooden bench of their garden while she reminisced the past somewhat consoled her. But the tranquil air was immediately shattered when she heard her husband and Rosalyn talking about their contract marriage. It shattered her heart to hear her husband cite their marriage as nothing but a union of convenience, a merger without love involved. She knew from the start that romantic feelings were impossible between them, but she became hopeful. He was kind, sweet, considerate, and always come to her rescue when the other noble ladies belittle her flawed demeanor at parties. She misunderstood the good treatment he's been giving her. Knowing how Rosalyn and Aslan would eventually end up together, just like in the novel, she fled from the scene and forced her heavy feet towards the manor, only to lose consciousness just before she can enter the front door. She became weak because of the abuse and stress she suffered from the Laerstein family. Her body failed to endure the emotional onslaught that morning at the garden. With hazy consciousness, she saw someone by her bedside and mistook it for her maid named Jenna, because why would her husband be mindful of her when he already found his true love? Unbeknownst to the Duchess, it was indeed the Duke who was taking care of her at that time. Worried for his wife's welfare, he gave orders to all servants to steer clear of the Duchess' room. She didn't see how bothered he was that she's sick, and how he prayed for her to get well soon as he stayed at her bedside while holding her hand. Meanwhile, Rosalyn, who was left behind by the Duke without even a brief word of goodbye, was asking Jenna if the Duke knew she wanted to visit the Duchess. The maid informed her that the Duke gave strict orders for everyone to avoid the Duchess' room and the hall where it resides to give the lady of the house uninterrupted rest. Exasperated and disappointed, Rosalyn treads the manor's halls as haughty thoughts fill her mind. She's far more adored and loved by people. They even consider her more deserving as a lady of the house. Aslan have no use for a duchess who can't play the part well. A devious plan started to play on her mind as she stared at the couple's portrait. It won't be hard for her to covet the duchess' seat. Days after, the Duchess woke up. Jenna, her maid, was there to assist her. As she was getting up, the maid told her that it was the Duke who took care of her, and it was only that morning he left her side. He is with Rosalind, taking care of something. The two are definitely getting closer. When she asked for the date, the answer Jenna gave her made her realize it was her real birthday, not Helena Laerstein's but Leela Violet's, on that chilly sunset by the terrace. Aslan, who already knows her predicament, promised to celebrate her birthday. Driving away the dread she felt upon hearing that Rosalind and Aslan were together, she felt hopeful. Aslan always kept his promises. She asked Jenna to help her dress up. Dolled up, she excitedly rushed to look outside her bedroom window when she heard the carriage arrive by the front door, only to see her husband escorting Rosalind as she alighted. In her eyes they looked perfect together, just in the novel. Unable to bear the sight any longer, she walked away from the window and sat by her dresser, waiting the butler's announcement of that evening's itinerary. And so, it came. The Duke will be having dinner with Rosalind. With a sinking heart, the Duchess acceded and told the butler, before dismissing him, to tell her husband that she's fine. Feeling stuffy inside her room, she encountered Rosalind in the hallway. The young lady was ecstatic because the Duke is about to gift her a dress as thanks for accompanying him to a ball last night. A sinking feeling filled the Duchess' heart. The scenes of the novel are taking shape as it should be. There would be no place for the extra anymore. Following that train of thought, she decided that it's finally time to say goodbye and end their contract marriage. What she didn't know was her husband was already getting impatient and was extracting in a stern manner the information he's been waiting for Rosalyn to disclose to him. That afternoon, the Duchess requested an audience with her husband. She finally said goodbye, but the Duke told her to wait until he comes back. In a rush, he left her without even a vague explanation as to why Rosalind is with him, with only a runner as companion. While the Duke was away, the Duchess decided to leave. Jenna, her maid, and Dalton, the butler, were doing their best to make her stay, but she already made up her mind. Wearing the plainest clothes, she packed the same kind of clothing in a small suitcase and left everything Aslan gave her. She left her wedding ring, along with a letter of goodbye and their contract. Unbeknownst to her, Aslan was tracking down Glock. After their marriage, Aslan eradicated the Laerstein family, who was trying to get their clutches on the railroad business owned by the Thordal family. When Count Laerstein died, Marissa, his mistress, and her son, Glock, fled. For 3 years, he pursued them. His information gatherers led him to the estate of Baron Peridot, who took Marissa as his mistress. He lost all his fortune after she lured him into gambling. Crazed, he killed her, then committed suicide shortly after. Glock fled from their estate. Their leads led them after sniffing out a rumor. Glock was in a relationship with the only daughter of the Peridot family, Rosalind, paying all of her debts, adopting her as his ward. It will surely lure Glock out of his hiding. That was his reason for bringing her into his manor. Meanwhile, as dusk was approaching, the Duchess reached Elode. It is the place where her family fled into, for fear that it might cause trouble for the Duke should someone connect her real identity to the Violet family. Hearing her name, Leela, being called by her mother, she's finally home. That evening, the whole Thordal manor was in chaos. The Duke was in a sour mood because Glock escaped, and went sour still when he discovered his wife has left. Giving one order after the other, he expedited the search for Glock and deployed the dukedom's knights to guard his wife. After giving instructions to his butler to procure the necessary preparations for his own trip to Elode, the Duke went to his room. Rereading his wife's farewell letter, it sounded as if she misunderstood that he plans to marry Rosalind. Exasperated, he pulled out an elaborate box from his pocket. It contained the intricately designed engagement ring he planned to give her that day, as a birthday present, to end their contract marriage and mark the start of a real relationship with her. He landed his eyes on the contract which she signed. He ripped it with vehemence. From the very start, he never planned to end his marriage with his wife. 4 years ago, before he even met her, he's been having dreams of a brown-haired petite lady. In the dream, he is older than his current self. The lady forced him into 3 years of contract marriage by blackmailing him about his secret. Said lady left him after the agreed time of divorce and was never heard of again, leaving him with a broken heart. He died alone, filled with loneliness and regret. Waking up, he felt ridiculous for getting affected with such a dream. Is it what they call a precognitive dream? Duke Aslan Thordal doesn't believe in such nonsense. Nevertheless, he wanted to understand what the dream was all about. Using the lady's features, he moved his informants. After months of searching, they found her. Her name was Helena Laerstein, a young lady seldom seen at balls, often indoors due to poor constitution. Out of curiosity, he instigated their encounter. He deliberately dropped his handkerchief within her line of sight. As he expected, she picked up his handkerchief and called his attention. What he wasn't expecting was his reaction when he saw her up close. He fell in love with her at first sight. Knowing she does exist, he obsessed over the dream, bought the dresses he saw her wore in the dream, even the mentioned scents. He bought all of them as he waited for her to finally visit his manor. That night, as she begged him to marry her, and he asked her for a reason why he should accept her proposal, he was already expecting a blackmail from Helena Laerstein, similar to what she did in his dreams. But it never came. Even when she did mention his secret, She never actually said what secret was it. She pleaded in later cards bare instead. She honestly admitted she's not the real Helena Learstein and the Count was detaining her in his manor until she's of age to claim his late wife's riches and properties left under her name as Helena. Amazement and relief flooded his face. The Helena that he loved and hated in his dreams was not the same in real life. She didn't resort to blackmail. Rather, she trusted him with her plight. Seeing how the him from the dream died of loneliness, his anger getting a hold of his emotions and betraying his wife and letting her leave, he swore not to make the same mistake. From the very beginning, he planned a relationship where they just love each other without any hatred or misunderstanding. Morning came. The maids of Thordal Manor are abuzz with preparations for their master's trip. Rosalyn, hearing the news about the Duchess' departure, felt even more confident than ever. With the Duchess out of the picture, it would be easier for her to make the Duke realize who it is that he truly loves. However, things won't go as she planned. For as soon as she voiced out her intention to come with him, the Duke brushed her off and instructed his butler to escort her back inside. Meanwhile, at the Violets, Leela is having a warm moment with her parents while sharing home-cooked meals prepared by their parents. Her brother, Aiden, even teased her about the Duke, that his actions seem like not just out of kindness, hinting that there's a much deeper meaning to it. Remembering the Duke sent stabbing sensations in her heart, she's certain that they are already getting much closer, since she's out of the picture. At the Duke's manor, left by her lonesome, with just maids to keep her company, Rosalyn was rebelling, annoyed that she was left behind. She ordered the maid to set an appointment with the dressmaker. That night, she procured a new dress which she believed will be appealing for Aslan's eyes. Wearing the dress, she trod the way back to the Duke's manor, humming a happy tune. She even twirled to test the feel of the dress, when all of a sudden, a man grabbed her and swiped her against a wall. It was Glock. Rage filled her as she saw the man who abandoned her after her father died and she was sold. Seeing that he can't approach her normally, Glock reminded her that he knew of her secret and reveal it any time. Dread filled her and made her unable to move. She met Glock 2 years ago, one usually boring day. It was her first time seeing a handsome man with unusual features and silver tongue. She immediately fell for him and shared an intimate relationship with him. Unfortunately, those intimacies got her pregnant. All that Glock did was told her to wait. But waiting was all that happened, for when her father got bankrupt and committed suicide, she had a miscarriage because of shock. Glock ran away and abandoned her as she was being sold. It is then she met Aslan Thordal, a young, handsome and wealthy duke who paid her debts. His wife is a sickly lady who seemed to have a not-so-good relationship among the noble ladies. She coveted her spot from the start, thinking that she's easy prey. Back to present, Rosalyn slapped Glock after he mocked and threatened her. She ran in an instant when she saw the stunned look on his face. Reaching the Duke's manor, her dread only increased. The Duke might really turn away from her in disgust if her discover her secret. Meanwhile, the Duke has reached his wife's current location and was about to knock when he saw her by the open window, radiantly smiling and beautiful as ever. It was the first time he saw her looking so happy. It made him question his right to bring her back with him at the Thordal Manor, where she never looked happy and always looking insecure. Her brother Aiden went out of the front door of their home, followed by his wife in her casual clothes, without even a wrap or a cloak. The morning was chilly, but the siblings went on harvesting herbs as if it was summer. Aslan Thordal hid behind a tree and continued to observe. As she was picking herbs, Leela unintentionally thought of Aslan. He is probably being intimate with Rosalind at the moment. Unable to bear the pain, she shook her head and looked away, only to see a man's silhouette. Leela thought it was her husband, Aslan, only to get momentarily disappointed to find out that it wasn't. It was a man called Hans, who was a local postman who delivers daily newspaper. Mesmerized by her, Aiden, her brother, reminded Hans not to covet his sister because she is already married. Leela corrected her brother and said she's already divorced. Aslan, who was covertly listening, felt sad for his wife. She must have really suffered when she was still with him, forced to live under a name that isn't hers and be in a contract marriage for 3 years. Who would be happy? When his wife was summoned by her mother inside, because she's been out in the cold for far too long, the Duke decided to leave and head back to his manor. He left the dukedom's knights to guard his wife and to report immediately of any happenings from her home. In the Duke's manor, Rosalyn was waiting for Rosalyn to come back. When a maid announced his arrival and that the Duchess wasn't with him, she rushed out of her room and welcomed him sweetly, not minding the sour mood he's under. Out of excitement, Rosalyn made a slip. Unfortunately for her, the Duke caught ear of it. Summoning the servants who were directly serving under his wife, the Duke clarified things. The dress was her request, and not as a gift from the Duke, as she told the Duchess. The dinner with Rosalyn that transpired on Leela's birthday was because she told the Duke that his wife made excuses that she's not feeling well and wanted to rest by herself in her room. It dawned on him. It was his fault for not keeping Rosalyn in check. Infuriated with Rosalyn, he instructed his butler to extricate her from the manor and transfer her immediately to another house. If Glock attempts to contact her, he must be captured at all cost and brought to him. As soon as Glock is captured, Rosalyn is to be banished and never be allowed near him or his wife ever again. As Rosalyn was being taken away, a letter from the Elode house arrived. Mr. Violet was seen rushing to town to buy cold medicine. Leela got sick for going out in the cold of the morning. Worried for his wife's welfare, the Duke went agaga. He summoned the doctor and instead of sending him off by himself, he decided to accompany him. His apprehensive state allowed his enemies to see an opening and sent for an assailant. In a rush to board a train with the doctor, he didn't bring an escort and was in a hurry crossing the street that he failed to notice the rushing carriage meant to run him over, despite the doctor's warning. The Duke badly injured his head and was unconscious. While out of sorts, Aslan dreamt about a brown-haired petite woman. She was able to blackmail him into marriage by telling him she knew his secret. Said secret was his cover-up of his mother's crime. She killed his father, and he made it appear like an accident. Soon right after, he sent his mother at a monastery to avoid trial. He married the woman and stayed married to her for 3 years. She left with no qualms. When he woke up, his servants were showing anxious expressions. Seems like his head injury caused amnesia, and he can't remember all the things that transpired right after he turned 20. When he woke up, he immediately inspected the couple paintings hanging by the walls of his manor. He still can't believe that he married the woman who looks exactly like the woman in his dream who threatened him. His butler was explaining things to him, but everything just sounded vague. When he was advised to go and see the madam to help him regain his memories, he vehemently rejected the idea. He summoned for the other woman who was staying within his property in another house instead. Rosalyn was ecstatic as she faced Aslan. She thwarted the facts as much as she can and brazenly claimed they were lovers. When the Duke asked his butler of the legitimacy of her claims, the butler honestly told him that he was not privy to the actual details. All he knew is that the Duke banished Rosalyn for disregarding his feelings and telling lies to his wife, whom he regarded as the most important thing in his life. The Duke bluntly pointed out that said wife left his side on her own. Still undecided, the Duke requested Rosalyn to stay with him for the time being, as he tried to regain his lost memories. Rosalyn was beyond herself from the happiness she was feeling that moment. Meanwhile at the Violet house, Leela recovered from her cold and was sipping tea when Hans, the postman, arrived with the daily newspaper. There has been an accident in the capital. Having a bad feeling, she reached for the Daily Post and read the news. Duke Aslan Thordal suffered severe injury after a carriage ran him over. Fear and worry filled her very being, and she longed to see him and inquire about his health. Seeing her plight, her family voiced out their support and urged her to see him. Meanwhile, in the Duke's manor, Rosalyn was doing all her best to brainwash the Duke into believing they were actually a couple, and continued on with her fake stories. The Duke wasn't actually convinced. If he's to be honest with himself, Rosalyn isn't his type. He would rather have the woman from his dream who exudes a certain air of purity and simplicity. Since he is still processing his situation and making adjustments with his elusive memories, he let her talk. That was until Dalton came and made his usual daily reports. Among them was the gossip going around his fellow nobles. They were actually thinking that his accident was because he was devastated over his wife who left the manor and their looming divorce. Worried that question about his mental state might arise, which can greatly affect the Thordal stocks in a negative way, he contemplated what can he do to stop the gossips. Rosalyn saw an opportunity to solidify her position as the next Duchess. She suggested they walk around town, whilst making it seem like an intimate date. The Duke saw the potential in her suggestion and agreed. Unbeknownst to them, Leela is already at the capital and was nearby. Her father, out of fear that she might get kidnapped again, escorted her incognito as her porter. As they were about to head to the Thordal Manor, she saw Aslan and Rosalyn walking closely together. Little did she know it was all for show. Rosalyn saw her ride across them and deliberately tripped, making excuses to the Duke that the new shoes she's wearing are not fitting correctly, and she finds it hard to walk. The Duke carried her bridal style, with the purpose of driving away the rumors still in his mind. Leela witnessed it all. She felt exasperation and pity towards herself for still feeling hurt. She had no right to feel that way. Their contract already ended. She pulled her father away from the scene before he can even see it, and started walking away. However, somebody called out to her. It was her personal maid at the manor, Jenna. She's begging her to come back. The situation just turned serious. Puzzled by Jenna's utterance, she asked her why. The maid told her everything, including the reason for their master's accident. Worry, love, and guilt flooded her. Leela decided to finally see the Duke. Meanwhile, the Duke was contemplating over things. The moment he carried Rosalyn, the memories of someone he once used to carry in his arms entered his mind. She was lighter than Rosalyn. The name Helena Laerstein persistently appears in his fragmented memory. His footman and runner announced the Duchess' arrival, and he granted her audience. As she walks towards the grand hall, memories came in waves. The dreams, the reality, and the fragmented memories overlap each other. He paled with the ridiculousness of his situation. But above all that, one emotion kept coming up front. It's as if he is in love with her. Whatever he was experiencing now, he never experienced it with Rosalyn. He questioned his relationship with this lady in front of him. What's worse is that he can't bear to be near her. Not because he abhors her presence. It's quite the contrary. All he can think of is he wants to hold her in his arms and kiss her. Desire, conflicting emotions, and waves of memories are making it hard to breathe. He covered it up by accusing her of taking advantage of their marriage and exploiting his good graces. Seeing her tears only made him feel worse. It's as if his own heart is breaking. Rosalyn entered the scene, and seeing how the Duchess' presence is affecting Aslan, and out of fear that his memories might come back, she drove her away, calling her a shameless woman for coming back even when their contract marriage is already over. Leela left the manor, determined never to show her face ever again. As she met with her father, she showed him a smile amidst the looming tears in her eyes. Faking a cheery attitude, she beckoned him to accompany her and choose gifts for her mother and brother. Meanwhile, at the Thordal Manor, the Duke came down with a fever. After seeing his wife that day, unknown memories came to his mind. He questioned the looming happiness he felt as his mind is filled with memories he knows nothing of. Never had he imagined that he could be happy with someone, ever since his mother went mad. They were what people call battered wife and son. His father would beat him up, and his mother would intervene and get beaten up herself. Worse than him. When he was old enough, he carried out his long-awaited plan of killing his own father to stop his mother's suffering. Unfortunately, his father discovered it and almost killed him. It was his mother who gave him the killing blow. She stabbed him with a dagger. She lost her mind afterwards and stopped recognizing him. In her eyes, he who looks so much his father was the very man she despises and fears at the same time. Every time she sees him, her own son, she goes ballistic and becomes uncontrollable. From then on, He stopped caring about women right after he covered up his mother's crime of murdering his father and sending her off to the monastery. The woman who exploited him and blackmailed him is the very woman who makes him feel happy. Meanwhile, as the Duke sleeps, Rosalyn was anxiously asking the doctor about Aslan's welfare, not because she's genuinely worried about him, but because she fears he might regain his memories back. The Duke was dreaming again. This time he saw himself and the woman called Helena Laerstein in a monastery where his mother lay lifeless in her coffin. The lady was crying bitterly than he is. In his eyes, she is not gorgeous, but she is elegant. She looks beautiful even in mourning clothes. He wanted her. He coveted her. He desired her and longed for her love. He was able to marry her, but in a different way. She blackmailed him, and they got married in a monastery where his mother spent the rest of her days until she perished. His love got twisted. He loves her so but resents her at the same time. When she begged him to love her just once, he felt happy. He chose to hurt her by choosing Rosalind. Unable to bear the pain, Helena left him. It broke his heart, and he committed suicide. As he was falling down the cliff, he woke up with a start on his bed, drenched in sweat. Rosalind was there to wipe him down and was about to call for a doctor when the Duke grabbed her wrist and pulled her to him. Foolishly believing his dreams as reality, he let himself be consumed with rage towards his ex-wife. He proposed to Rosalind and promised to marry her as soon as his divorce papers were signed. Rosalind was, of course, happy. She finally won and had the Duke. Morning came. News of the Duke's new marriage reached far and wide. Even the train that Leela and her father were currently boarding. Leela accepted it as fate and surrendered herself to the original course of the novel, which she believes as something she cannot oppose no matter what she does. At the Thortle Manor, Aslan summoned Dalton, his butler cum retainer, and ordered him to expedite the divorce proceedings and prepare for a wedding. Dalton, being the loyal servant that he was, tried reasoning out to his master and pleaded him to rethink his decision. The Duke bluntly put the butler in his place and openly rejected any opposition that may come from him. Helpless, the butler acceded to his master's decision and asked him where he wanted the wedding. The Duke inquired where was the previous marriage took place. Much to his surprise, it was held at the Grand Cathedral and not on a monastery. His mother still lives, and their manor just received news that his mother is getting weaker, but is still alive. Shocked registered on his face. What an utter fool he was. How can he mix memories of reality to his vivid dreams? Realizing his mistake, he ordered Dalton to stop all wedding preparations. The next day, as Aslan was contemplating on his actions and the things he ought to do, Rosalind visited his study and inquired on the halt he imposed on the wedding preparations. He told her he needed to check on things to make sure he doesn't make a hasty decision. He then proceeded to ask Rosalind if he truly said out loud that he is annoyed by his contract marriage with his ex-wife. Rosalind blatantly lied and said yes. Wanting to get in his good graces, Rosalind talked about Aslan's mother in the monastery, making one obvious mistake. She said his mother was getting better, when in fact, ever since his mother entered the monastery, her health never improved. Remembering his mother's condition made him recall a memory he shared with Helena. Secretly, he would read the letters of the monastery in the garden, away from prying ears. But Helena found him one day. She casually inquired if it was from the monastery. Not wanting to disclose his mother's condition, he lied about the letter, said it was from his mother, congratulating them on their marriage. She gave him an understanding smile and held his hand. Instead of threatening him and using his secret to blackmail him, she told him that she'll pray for them both, mother and son. From that, he made up his mind. He'll meet his ex-wife. Despite Rosalind's attempt to stop him, he rang for his butler and ordered him to buy him a train ticket to a load. As a last ditch to make him stay, Rosalind clung to him and reminded him that he got sick right after he met his ex-wife. It would be best to take plenty of rest before traveling far. He intercepted her by saying that when he's with her, no memories, no emotion comes. He feels calm and at ease. he is certain that he never loved her. He ordered his butler to send Rosalyn to the Amber House once again. He is still uncertain which of the memories and the scenes from his dreams are his actual memories, but he is sure that the things filled his mind as of late are because of Helena Lehrstein. Plagued with longing for the men she loves and the desire to suppress such thoughts, Leela stayed up until snow fell from the sky. Her parents, after giving her their morning greetings, were contemplating as to what happened when father and daughter went to the capital to see the Duke. All they know for certain is that it's a big misunderstanding between them. Alone in her bedroom, Leela determinedly swore to herself that never again shall she foolishly hope of being loved by a Slan Thordle. Said man just arrived at the train station of the town. He was surprised how well maintained the station is and the facilities are clean. His companion explained that he himself ordered the development of the rural area. Wondering why would he order such a thing, he mused that it must also be because of her. Meanwhile, at the Violets, Leela decided to spend her time in embroidery. Accidentally, she pricked her finger with the needle and memories of Aslan worrying over her came rushing in. She admonished herself for foolishly thinking of him. A shout from her bedroom door broke her reverie. It was Aaron, beckoning her to come downstairs. Wondering why, she relented and went down, only to be surprised. Lo and behold, it was Aslan Thordle in the flesh, standing there before her very eyes. Stunned at his sudden appearance in their home, all she could mutter was ask him what he was doing there as she slowly descended the stairs. Halfway though, he rushed to her without answering and inquired if she's hurt. Instead, wondering why he's asking her that, she absent-mindedly stared at her finger and saw its bloodied state. As she looked up again, she discovered that he crossed her personal space. Seeing him up close, after a long time, made her weak in the knees and she almost fell had he not caught her in his arms. He apologized for the intimate contact and explained that his body moved on its own. His mind might have forgotten, but his body remembered it well that he used to catch her whenever she fell. The spectators downstairs just stared at them. They looked like they're in the mood for something unspoken. The Duke asked for a first aid kit and treated her finger, asking her about their relationship and why she left him. When he's done with the bandagging, she told him the truth. Theirs was a contract marriage and it stayed that way. She left him because the contract is over and he has someone he truly loves. She caught him staring at her, but it didn't faze him. He commented that she looked thinner than when he last saw her instead. Is she sick? Is there something wrong with her health? Is she eating properly? Or isn't she getting enough sleep? His questions that sounded genuinely sincere evoked emotions in her she dared not welcome. She was assuring him she's fine, when all of a sudden, she coughed. The Duke left his seat and gave her a warm drink, stating that he clearly remembers that his wife is sickly, that as the air gets colder, she would be cooped in bed and coughing. Just by simply being with her, memories easily came to him. He kneeled on one knee and begged her to let him stay with her under the same roof while he regains all of his memories. Meanwhile, at the Amber House, Rosalyn was left all alone by the servants. She takes care of all her needs. Left with no money, she's thinking if she should sell some of her clothes to earn funds for her food and firewood. She was such in a predicament when Glock appeared right in front of her. Back in the load, after a hearty homemade meal by the Violets, the Duke was given a tour in their small home by none other than Leela. Staying in her room to talk, the Duke was surprised to know her past circumstances and how they ended up married. Seeing that there was nothing for him to gain with their contract union, he came up with the conclusion that he must have been very much in love with her. Not wanting to get swayed, she denied the possibility of what he was saying. He was in love with Rosalyn and not her. He even went as far as say that the marriage was a nuisance. The Duke then asked her if she ever told him she loved him, or if he told her he is in love with her. She honestly told him the truth. No. They never shared an intimate moment on the same bed. Leela then told the Duke that she believes his memory loss is hindering his judgment and reasoning. When the time comes that he regains all his memories, he'll see that everything is just a misunderstanding. However, It did not faze the Duke from deciding that he needs to get closer to her in order to regain all his memories. 2 days have passed, and the Duke was able to help with their house chores as if he's been living there for a very long time. As she accompanies him to chop firewood, his retainer came giving him a change of clothes. Leela admonished him for staying at their house. Rosalyn must be worried with his decision to stay for an extended time at his ex-wife's house. He corrected her. They were still legally married. When she gave him a doubtful stare, he told her that at some point he tore the contract and divorce papers. Seemed like he doesn't want to end their marriage. Disbelief filled her face. She doesn't want to believe it, even when she saw he still wore their wedding ring. Even when they were still living as contract couple in the Thordal Manor, there was never a day that Aslan Thordal didn't wear his wedding ring. However, the rumor she heard in the train bothered her. According to rumors, the inside of the wedding band of the Duke bears the name of the one he truly loves. Her name was akin to a flower. Wanting to contradict his beliefs that he was in love with her, during their 3 years of married life, she voiced out her concern. Without hesitation, he took off his ring, beckoning her to come see for herself. Filled with pity for herself, she snapped at him and said that she need not see with her own eyes that it was Rosalyn's name. The Duke laughed at her and showed her nonetheless. Leela was inscribed in his ring, her real name. No doubt that she is the only girl he ever loved, and nothing can stop him from doing everything he can to win her heat back, until she love him with the same level of passion he does. Meanwhile, at the Amber House, Glock was once again manipulating Rosalyn into believing that he loves her and that selling all her jewelries and clothes would pave the way for greater things they can accomplish. Back at the Volets, the Duke was helping with field work. When Iden, Leela's brother, came with apple pie sprinkled with cinnamon, as Iden addressed him by his title, he asked him to call him Aslan. Left by themselves surrounded by trees, Aslan offered the pie to Leela. She thought he must have really lost his memories. She never liked foods with strong scents. That's why he always keeps strong-scented food away from her. As she was about to reach for the pie, he moved it away from her. He explained that he remembers her food preferences. Hopeful that he already regained his memories, she asked him about it, but all he said was it was on reflex. He never remembers people's name that got no bearing in his business, least of all their preferences or personal details. If she's not keeping any kind of hidden wealth, then it must mean he truly loves her. His words made her heart aflutter, but she immediately checked herself. His memory loss is just muddling his emotions. The next morning, things were a bit awkward and she can't even face Aslan properly. Wanting to avoid him, she decided to get the newspaper from Hans when he came, only to get scolded by Aslan for rushing outside without so much as a wrap. When she tried to argue, he cited that she had a cold not too long ago. She was surprised to hear him remember hers cold. It was the very reason he got hurt in the first place. When she tried to confront him about it, all he said was he vaguely remembered hearing about it. Seeing Hans go all flirty with her, Aslan openly showed his displeasure and intimidated the man. Not wanting to believe that he is jealous, Leela shouted at Aslan, asking what does he think he's doing intimidating the poor local postman that way. Instead of being angry with her, he explained that he is jealous and that he wanted to show her that he is being serious with her. Exasperated, she just exclaimed that he is different from the Aslan she once knew. He asked her about his previous demeanor and she talked about his kindness, generosity, compassion, but he was never that open when it comes to romantic notions. He told her that she's been misled. All his past actions were just for show in order to win her favor. He then asked her if she was disappointed. She said no, she will always think of him as a good person. Because to make an effort to make a good impression on the person one likes is a kind act. It stems from the thoughtfulness and respect one has for the cherished person. In response, Aslan teased her that she finally acknowledged he has feelings for her. She fled from him and went back inside the house. Rosalyn is confronting Glock with his ridiculous idea of making her a duchess. Aslan already abandoned her, but Glock disclosed Duke Thordal's secret. Helena Laerstein is not who she shows society. She is in fact Leela Violet, daughter of a commoner. The Duke might be a formidable foe, but Leela is still vulnerable. If they blackmailed him about her name and threaten him that they'll disclose her real identity to society, he'll owe anything they ask of him just to protect his wife, whom he cherishes a lot. On a bright sunny day, Leela was dressed in normal clothes and was about to head out. When Aslan saw her, he asked if he could come, even though she told him that it would be boring. He still insisted on coming with her. Persuaded, they went out, with the Duke dressed down in commoner garb. Still people regarded him, his noble demeanor still oozing even when he's dressed so simply. Reaching the church where she teaches language to children, they immediately flocked around her and asked about the stranger with her. She told them he a guest staying at their house. Aslan watched her as she went on her lecture. From that moment, he completely regained his memories. The overlapping fragments are now clear. The dreams are not dreams of the future. Those are memories from his past life. The woman in his dreams and the woman in front of him is the same woman he loved in the past and in the present, Leela Violet. Meanwhile in the capital, Glock started to move. He approached the Duke's rival in business, the Mistress Company. Its owner is the mastermind behind Duke Aslan Thorndale's assault. Swamped with worry, the owner of the Mistress Company was wondering why Duke Thorndale hasn't made his move yet. It was when Glock knocked on his door and offered a proposal. Using the allure of owning the Thorndale Railways, he devised a plan to get rid of the Duke together with the owner of the Mistress Company. At the Amber House, Rosalyn was contemplating whether she should continue to side with Glock or not. The latter took a better hold of her and decided to extricate herself from the situation. She started to write a letter. In the load, Leela's lecture just finished and the kids were requesting an outing at the beach. Since she is not a full-fledged teacher, she asked the priest of the church for consent. The priest acceded and they all went out to enjoy the beach. It started getting hot and Leela decided to rest by the available blanket they brought with them. Aslan approached her for water since his throat is parched from all the play he did with the kids. As she watched him gulp his water from the bottle, a scene that made her heart race suddenly popped from a distant memory, and as he sat beside her and held her hand, she wondered if he's feeling the same warm and fuzzy feeling she feels inside. Staring at each other's eyes, they almost shared a kiss if not for one of her students calling out to her. After that heart-pounding moment, Leela can't seem to get it out of her head. Devilish thoughts kept pestering her, urging her to pursue a romantic relationship with Aslan. But she knew better. Aslan only likes her at present. Because of his memory loss, he deserves to love someone who is well suited for him. Doing her best to escape such thoughts, she made the lame excuse of borrowing books from the vicarage. She ended up in town, and seeing a friend. She noticed there were more people than usual and asked about it. Her friend told her it was because of the festival. Returning home, she heard her family making plans to go to the festival. They ended up making plans to go with the Duke. That afternoon, as he was feeling warm from the family that welcomed him as their own, a letter arrived for him. It was Rosalyn asking to meet him. His mood turned a full 180. Displeasure was visible on his face. His servants suggested that he send a representative, but the Duke declined. The woman blatantly lied and shamelessly tried to steal away Leela's position as his wife. He won't let her get away that easily. The day of the festival came. Leela's mother made efforts to doll her up. The result was surprising. It was not as glamorous as the makeup done in the capital, but it sent out her maidenly glow and beauty. As they were roaming around the festival, she noticed quite a few things but held back from buying them. She doesn't want to burden her family with unnecessary expenses. But as they were meeting up to regroup, she noticed that Aslan bought everything that she landed her eyes on. Her parents then said their goodbyes and bid them a pleasant night. They will go ahead first and they can enjoy the rest of the festival. They even dragged Aiden with them to give Aslan and her time to be together. Seeing as most of the couples were dancing by the bonfire, Aslan asked her for a dance. She agreed and they enjoyed a free-form dance. At the capital, Rosalyn was flooded with worry. She is not receiving any reply from the letters she sent to Aslan. Suddenly, the door of the house opened and in came Glock. Everything is in place. They just needed the Duke with all his memories. However, If he hasn't completely regained all of them, the plan won't work. Thus, Glock set out a plan to speed up the Duke's memory retrieval. Meanwhile, at the festival in Elode, Leela was taking a rest at one of the benches. Her foot is aching, but she had so much fun. As she was enjoying the cool night air, a passerby suddenly dropped a handkerchief. She noticed the item and called out the attention of the owner. It was a noble man. He was grateful for her kind gesture and started to open small talk, only to be intercepted by the Duke. He immediately left after encountering the Duke's intimidating aura. He turned to Leela and scolded her for having the habit of picking up handkerchiefs. Leela then suspected that Aslan has fully regained his memories, but he denied it. Left with nothing to say, Leela turned around to go home, only to trip. Fortunately, Aslan was quick to assist her. Noticing a limp in her gait, he asked to see her foot. What she considered a simple abrasion turned out a serious one that needed doctor's treatment. Not wanting to aggravate her wounds any further, he carried her bridal style as they went to see a doctor. The nobleman whose handkerchief Leela picked was watching not far from them, as expected. Since she's beautiful, she has a lover. Feeling regretful, the man turned to leave, only to find himself being dragged by someone from the shadows of the alley of which he stood watching the couple.